What do you mean you haven't had a sip of water since you clocked in? It's been 6 hours. Rylan Boone blinked, trying to keep his voice steady as he stood near the flat-top grill, spatula in hand, watching the young line cook beside him sweat through her shirt. Her name tag read, Jules. She looked barely 20. Manager says we don't get water unless we're on break, Jules muttered, eyes down on the sizzling burgers. Breaks are only if we're scheduled over 8 hours. And even then, sometimes he says we're too busy. Rylan didn't answer. He just stared at the steam rising off the grill, his jaw tight. He'd come here undercover to get a real look at what was going wrong in his business. But this wasn't just mismanagement. This was inhumane. 3 weeks earlier, Rylan had been sitting in his office, staring at a stack of performance reports from his 11 fast food stores. The numbers looked fine, stable profits. Decent customer feedback, but something felt off. He'd inherited the company from his father 3 years ago and had tried to keep things running without micromanaging. But lately, he'd been hearing faint whispers from the HR pipeline high turnover at the Jefferson Street location, a few unverified complaints about hostile management, and too many staff quitting without notice. Frustrated with vague reports and sugar-coated updates from district management, Rylan decided to see things for himself. He picked Jefferson Street. It was one of the busiest stores, but he'd never personally visited. Most of the current staff had been hired after his father passed, and none of them would recognize him. He dyed his hair, trimmed his beard, removed his usual glasses, and wore a fake name tag that read Kyle. Posing as a new trainee, he had a backstory. Recently moved to town, looking for steady work, no experience in fast food. The disguise was good. Even the district manager didn't recognize him during orientation. Training started rough. The place was short-staffed, he asked why, and the answer was always the same. People just don't want to work. But what he saw didn't match that. The crew worked hard. Jules was fast and focused, even though it was clear she was exhausted. Another young guy, Marcus, handled the fryer like a pro, barely speaking but always moving. There was Haley, the shift lead, who stayed calm under pressure and kept people organized. But none of them smiled, no one joked around, the energy was tense, like people were just trying to survive the shift. And then there was the manager, Derek. Derek was in his late 30s, wore mirrored sunglasses inside, and barely left the back office. When he did come out, it was only to bark orders or complain about food waste. Rylan noticed he rarely touched the grill or helped during rush, despite the store being slammed with lunch traffic. On his third day, Rylan finally saw it. Jules wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand and glanced at the clock. "You all right?" Rylan asked, flipping a chicken patty. "I'm dizzy," she whispered, "but I'm not allowed to step off." "You can't go get water?" "I asked yesterday." Derek said, "If you're thirsty, work faster and you'll earn your break." Rylan froze. "He said that?" Jules nodded, lips pressed thin. That was it. The moment everything shifted. Later that afternoon, he saw Marcus clutching his side while hauling a 30-pound bag of fries. Haley offered to help, but Derek snapped from the back. "If you can't lift it, I'll find someone who will." No one said anything. They just got quieter. After the shift, in the cramped employee hallway, Rylan overheard Derek talking to another manager over the phone. "Yeah, I told them again. No more water runs unless they're on break. They'll get lazy if we let them start strolling off for every little thing." Rylan's stomach turned. He wanted to storm in and say something right then, but he held back. Not yet. He needed to see more. He needed proof. So he stayed. The next day he came in early and helped Jules prep the grill. She thanked him. Her voice cracked. She hadn't had a glass of water since yesterday's shift. By the end of the week, Rylan had seen enough. There was no team issue. There was a management issue. And it was deeper than just Derek. The system allowed it. The district manager never visited. No one checked in. These workers weren't lazy. They were surviving in silence. Now, Rylan just had to figure out how to fix it and how to reveal who he really was without blowing the whole thing apart. The next morning, Rylan arrived early. The air inside the Jefferson Street store was still damp with the scent of fryer oil and yesterday's grime. He stepped into the back hallway, where crates of soda syrup leaned against the wall, and punched in his fake employee number. No one else was in yet, except for Haley, who was wiping down the prep table with quiet focus. Her hair was tied back tighter than usual, and the skin around her eyes looked bruised from lack of sleep. "You always open?" Rylan asked, pulling a box of buns from the walk-in cooler. "Past 3 weeks," she said without looking up. "Derek said I'm the only one who doesn't screw it up." Her voice had no pride in it, just fatigue. He watched her for a second. "You get paid extra for that?" She gave a short laugh. "Nope, but I get to keep my hours." That was new. The schedule Rylan had seen posted in the break room showed her pulling 6 shifts a week, all full days. He hadn't noticed until now that her name was always the opener. He kept his voice even. "Doesn't sound like much of a reward," she shrugged. "My daughter's in daycare until 5. I can't afford to lose shifts. So I keep my head down." That hit harder than he expected. She didn't complain. She just laid it out plain and dull, like losing sleep and missing time with her kid was just the cost of keeping her job. By mid-morning, the kitchen was buzzing. Marcus had arrived late, limping slightly as he moved toward the fryer. No one asked why. Derek hadn't shown up yet. Rylan was working the grill when a door slammed in the back. Heavy footsteps followed. Derek appeared in the kitchen without greeting anyone. He was holding a styrofoam cup of iced coffee, sunglasses still on, even though they were indoors. "Timer's off again," he barked, pointing toward the fryer station. "If I see burnt fries in one more order, I'm cutting labor for the night shift." Marcus looked down, jaw clenched. He didn't say a word. Derek turned toward Jules, who was loading sandwich wrappers into the warming drawer. "And you," he said, "wipe down that counter. It's disgusting. I don't care if it's not your section. I'm not paying people to stand around." Jules wiped her hands on her apron and went without a word. Rylan noticed her limping, a different kind than Marcus's subtler, favoring her left leg. Derek's phone rang. He stepped into the office without offering help to anyone. Rylan kept working. Orders came in faster. The drive-thru was backed up. Every station was running hot. Haley was juggling the headset, the register, and handing out food at the front window. No one else was cross-trained to help her. At 11:45, the tension snapped. A woman at the front counter shouted over the din. "Excuse me, my sandwich has no meat in it." Haley rushed over, apologizing. Rylan glanced at the screen. It had been Marcus's ticket. The patty was missing. Marcus was already pulling a new one from the freezer, but Derek stormed out of the office, snatched the sandwich from the woman's hands, and slammed it on the prep table. "You trying to bankrupt us?" he snapped. Rylan stepped in before he could say more. "Hey," he said, "it's a simple fix. No need to make it a scene." Derek turned slowly. "What did you say?" "I said the customer's upset. That doesn't mean we yell at each other." Derek stared at him for a beat, then laughed, short and sharp. "You're new. Don't make the mistake of thinking you know how this works." Rylan didn't flinch. "I know what being a decent human looks like." The kitchen froze. Haley glanced over, wide-eyed. Jules stopped mid-wrap. Marcus leaned slightly on the fryer station, watching. Derek didn't respond. He turned and walked back into the office. At noon, the lunch rush peaked. Rylan didn't get a break. Neither did Jules. Haley's voice cracked from calling out orders. Marcus worked slower now, clearly in pain, but still didn't complain. Derek never returned to the line. At 2:15, a delivery arrived 2 pallets of frozen goods and cleaning supplies. The driver waited in the back alley, knocking hard on the rear door. Haley looked over, hesitated. "I'll get it," Rylan offered. She nodded, grateful, and handed him the back keys. Outside, the heat was brutal. The driver, a middle-aged man with a clipboard, looked irritated. "Been out here 10 minutes, he muttered. Rylan helped unload, stacking boxes in the back hallway. He noticed something strange. Several of the cleaning containers were marked for industrial use only, not the usual supplies approved for food service. He flagged one with his phone camera when no one was looking. When he returned to the line, Jules was gone. "Where's Jules?" he asked Haley. "She sat down," Haley said. "Said her legs cramping too bad to stand." Rylan looked around. Jules was in the back hallway, hunched on a crate near the mop sink, eyes closed, breathing shallow. He walked over. "You all right?" She didn't answer right away. Then, barely audible, "Been hurting since last week. I think I pulled something, but I can't afford to skip shifts." He knelt beside her. You can't stand like this all day. She opened her eyes. If I leave, I don't get scheduled again. That's what happened to the last girl. Rylan stood slowly. He'd heard enough. He walked back to the kitchen. Derek was finally out of the office, eating from a takeout container at the counter, something from a nearby Thai place, not from the store. Rylan walked straight up to him. You knew Jules was hurt? Derek didn't even look up. What? Is this a rescue mission now? She's fine. If she's not, she can go home. You just cut her hours. Derek finally turned. What's your problem, man? You think this place runs on feelings? We've got quotas, labor targets. If people can't hack it, they're replaceable. Rylan stared at him. You're done. Derek blinked. What? I said you're done. Rylan pulled off his apron, then reached into his front pocket and pulled out the ID badge he hadn't worn all week, the real one. It had his full name on it. Rylan Boone, owner, and you're finished here. The silence in the kitchen was total. Haley dropped the headset. Marcus turned fully from the fryer. Jules, still leaning in the hall, sat upright, eyes wide. Derek looked like someone had punched the air out of him. You're joking, he finally muttered. No, you're not managing another hour in this building. Go to the office. Pack whatever you need. You'll be escorted out in 10 minutes. Derek opened his mouth, but whatever excuse he had died on his tongue. He stomped to the back office, slamming the door behind him. Rylan turned to the crew. I need 10 minutes, then we'll talk. All of us. He stepped outside and called his operations director. You free? He asked flatly. Yeah, I just fired Derek. I need HR here in 20. And I want a full audit of Jefferson Street's labor practices, starting today. He hung up, breathing hard. Inside, the kitchen still buzzed, but it felt different. The weight had shifted, and for the first time since he'd walked through those doors, Rylan felt like the company was finally his to fix. Rylan stood in the center of the kitchen, with his sleeves rolled up, apron off, and every eye on him. I need everyone in the dining area, he said. Now. The staff hesitated, unsure if they were allowed to leave their stations. Haley glanced toward the prep timer, then back at him. Food's off for the next half hour, Rylan said. If a customer walks in, we'll explain. Let's go. They followed him out, Haley, Marcus, Jules, and the two newer hires from the late morning shift. No one said a word as they sat at the empty booths, wiping their hands on napkins, eyes flicking between each other. Rylan remained standing. I've been working alongside you for over a week, and I've seen things that should never happen in any business, let alone mine. Jules sat stiffly, her legs stretched out slightly under the table to ease the pressure. Marcus leaned forward, arms crossed, his knee bouncing. Haley looked calm, but her fingers were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles pale. I'm not here to explain it away. I'm here to listen. I want to know what you've been dealing with, not just today, all of it. No one spoke at first, then Haley cleared her throat. When we're short, we don't get approval to call anyone in. Derek said overtime would get flagged by corporate. Rylan nodded once. Go on. If someone calls out sick, we just absorb it. Doesn't matter if there's 2 of us or 6. If we run behind, we get written up. Marcus shifted in his seat. I was late yesterday. I had a follow-up for my back. Got written up anyway. You injured yourself here? Marcus hesitated. Then, yeah. Slipped on fryer oil 2 weeks ago. No wet floor sign. Didn't want to report it. Figured it'd just get worse. Rylan looked at him. You didn't think we'd cover it? Didn't think you'd know. Jules leaned forward, her voice raspier than usual. When my register drawer was short last month by like $6, Derek said if it happened again, he'd take it from my check. I've never even touched the till. I just bag orders. That's illegal, Rylan said flatly. He ever actually do it? No. But he made sure I knew he could. The younger girl sitting across from them, a new hire named Morgan, who had mostly kept quiet the past week, spoke up. He told me to take my nose ring out or I'd get sent home. Said it looked unprofessional. But 2 guys have earrings and he never said anything to them. Rylan's jaw tightened. You document that? I mean, I told Haley. Haley nodded. I told him it wasn't dress code related. He said he didn't care. Rylan took a breath. How long has this been happening? Since before I started, Haley said. Everyone just kind of adjusted to it. Why didn't anyone escalate this? Haley's eyes met his. To who? The room went quiet again. Rylan didn't respond right away. He just looked around the dining area, the old posters peeling at the corners, the flickering light above the soda machine, the cracked vinyl on the booths. There was no pride in this store. There was survival. He turned back to them. Derek is gone, effective immediately, but that's not the end of it. He walked behind the counter, grabbed a legal pad from the drawer under the register, and returned to the table. I want names. Anyone else who's contributed to this culture, assistant managers, shift leads, even suppliers who've treated you like trash. I'll investigate every single one. Morgan looked uneasy. Won't that come back on us? It won't, Rylan said. Because this time, I'm not leaving it up to middle management. He handed the legal pad to Haley. You write it down, I'll collect it before I leave. He turned to Jules. You're off the next 3 days, fully paid. I want you in physical therapy by tomorrow. I'll have someone from HR call you tonight to set it up. Jules blinked. For real? Yes. And if they don't call, you call me directly. He pulled a card from his wallet, handed it to her. That's my number, not an assistant, me. Then he looked to Marcus. You're getting retroactive compensation for the days you worked injured. HR will handle it. And I want a safety inspection of this kitchen done by end of week. Marcus gave a small nod. It was the first sign of relief Rylan had seen on his face. And Haley, he said, you've been carrying this place. That ends now. You're going to train the next manager? She blinked. What? I'm bringing in someone from outside to lead for a while, but long term, I want you trained to take over. You'll get full manager pay during training, plus benefits. I don't know if I can. You can, and you won't do it alone. Rylan turned to the rest of the crew. New scheduling policy goes into effect immediately. No one works more than 5 consecutive hours without a paid break. Water is accessible at all times, no exceptions. No one is punished for taking care of themselves. He paused, scanning their faces. That sound reasonable? Morgan nodded slowly. Jules gave a quiet, yeah. Marcus muttered, about time. Rylan folded his arms. Here's the deal. You've all been pushed to your limits, and you kept showing up. That tells me everything I need to know about who's worth investing in. He looked at each of them. But I won't ask you to stay if things don't change. So if anything slips, I want to hear about it, directly. No more filters. No more silencing. Haley's voice was steadier now. What about the district team? They never came by, ever, even when we sent incident reports. They're being audited, Rylan said. Everyone above this store who ignored those reports will be held accountable, including our regional VP if it comes to that. You're not the only store I'm reviewing. He walked toward the front door, then turned back. I'll be here again tomorrow, not undercover, just working the floor. You'll see me regularly from now on. Then he added more quietly, I should have done that from the start. As he left the building, the late afternoon sun hit his face. He didn't feel triumphant. He felt responsible. Outside, a few customers were waiting by the entrance with confused expressions. Rylan stepped up. We're temporarily closed for a staff reset, he said. We'll be back in 30. One woman frowned. That sounds serious. It is, he said. But it's the kind of serious that makes things better. He stepped aside, letting the team take a breath inside. Behind him, for the first time all day, laughter rose faintly from the dining area. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The next morning, Rylan returned to Jefferson Street before the sun had fully risen. This time, he didn't wear a name tag. No fake story, no disguise. Just a black polo and jeans. He walked through the back entrance carrying 2 boxes, one with breakfast sandwiches from a nearby bakery, the other with fresh uniforms shipped in overnight. Inside, Haley was already prepping the register area, but stopped when she saw him. You're early, she said, brushing flour dust from the counter. So are you. She gave a small nod, then looked at the box in his arms. What's that? Something that fits better than those faded grays you've all been wearing. She lifted the lid and pulled out a navy shirt. It had the company logo stitched in white, but more importantly, it was clean, breathable, and modern. These are for everyone, Rylan said. One of the first things I noticed last week, you're representing our brand, but you're not treated like you matter. Haley held the shirt up to the light. This actually looks like something I'd wear on purpose. Exactly. By 7, the rest of the crew trickled in. Marcus, still favoring one side, arrived with a brace around his lower back. Jules followed soon after, walking slower than usual. She looked surprised when she saw the uniforms laid out neatly on the break room table. "You're not scheduled today," Rylan said to her. "You should be home." "I know," she said, "but I wanted to stop by. Let people know I'm okay." Haley handed her a sandwich and waved her toward the benches near the lockers. "Sit down before someone writes you up." That drew a few quiet chuckles from the others. At 8 sharp, Rylan gathered the team in the dining area again. This time, no one hesitated. "I've replaced the entire district oversight team," he said. "We're restructuring from the ground up, starting with this store." He pulled a small stack of printed documents from his folder and placed them on the table. "These are your new rights and protocols posted here and in the back hallway. You'll also get digital copies. These are non-negotiable. Every person on this team has the right to rest, hydrate, speak up, and be treated with respect. If anyone violates that, they won't work here. Simple as that." Morgan raised her hand. "How do we report stuff without it disappearing?" "Direct contact," Rylan said. "You'll have a rotating HR rep on site twice a week. You'll also get a dedicated line that sends reports straight to my office. There's no one in between." He turned to Marcus. "You're scheduled light for the next 3 weeks. We're covering your medical treatment, and you'll transition into trainer duties while you recover." Marcus looked stunned. "I've never trained anyone." "You've got the best station efficiency in the store. You'll do fine." Jules leaned forward. "And what about after my recovery?" "Once you're cleared, you'll return at full hours, but under a new role. We're creating a quality control position. Your job will be making sure no one ends up overworked or ignored like you were." Jules blinked. "That's a real position?" "It is now." He turned to Haley. "Your manager training starts Monday. You'll shadow one of our best leaders at the Midtown store. Then you'll come back and run this location." Haley's mouth opened slightly, then closed. When she spoke, her voice was steadier than it had been all week. "I won't let you down." "I know," Rylan said. "That's why I'm trusting you with it." The door opened, and a man in his 40s stepped inside, carrying a clipboard. He wore a clean company jacket, but no tie. "This is Roy," Rylan said, "interim manager. He's here to stabilize the store until Haley's ready. He doesn't outrank her. He supports her." Roy greeted the team with a quiet nod, then moved toward the back to begin inventory. Rylan continued. "We're also adjusting the schedule. You'll each have a say in your shifts. If you're in school, caring for family, whatever, you'll be heard, not shuffled around." He looked around the room. "But I need something in return. If you see someone slipping, disrespecting others, cutting corners, ignoring safety, I want to hear about it. Not later, immediately." Morgan raised her hand again. "What about hiring? We're still short." "We've opened a hiring event for this location," Rylan said, "but we're not filling spots just to fill them. You'll help vet candidates. No one joins this team unless they treat people right." Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Feels kinda weird," he said. "Being asked what we think." "It shouldn't," Rylan said. "That's how it should have always been." Lunch rush came, and though the staff was lean, the energy had shifted. Roy took the register. Haley managed the headset and drive-through window. Marcus guided the newer employees on the fryer, giving them tips on timing and prep. Rylan stayed near the grill, filling in where needed, but mostly watching. He noticed it in the small things. Haley correcting a ticket without snapping. Morgan asking a customer how their day was, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Even Marcus, still sore, smiling faintly as he showed a new guy how to portion fries without waste. Customers noticed too. One woman approached the counter to compliment the service. She paused when she saw Rylan behind the line. "You the new guy?" He wiped his hands. "Something like that." "Well, whatever changed here, tell your boss it's working." He nodded. "I'll make sure he knows." By mid-afternoon, the team rotated off for short breaks, staggered but guaranteed. Jules had left earlier, finally convinced she didn't need to prove anything by staying. Roy had already created a new break chart, posted clearly near the lockers. When the last ticket cleared, Rylan stepped into the back hallway. The whiteboard, once covered in Derek's angry notes, had been wiped clean. In its place was a handwritten message in blue marker. Respect. In here, it's not earned, it's expected. He didn't recognize the handwriting, but he didn't need to. As the sun dipped lower, he took off his gloves and stepped outside. The air smelled different now, not cleaner, but lighter. The kind of air you could breathe without bracing for the next problem. He stared at the building for a moment. It still needed a paint job. The signage could use updating, but those were cosmetic. What mattered had already started changing. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Haley joined him, wiping her hands on a towel. "Long day," she said. "Good one," he replied. She looked at the sky, then back at the store. "They're going to talk about this." "Let them." She hesitated, then said, "You think they'll believe it?" "Not right away," Rylan said. "They'll wait to see if it sticks." "And will it?" He met her eyes. "You tell me." She thought for a moment. "Yeah, I think it will. No more pretending, no more hidden cameras or secret notes. Just a team that finally got to work with dignity and a leader who finally understood what that meant."